Hello, listeners. Today on the Cougs and Sport Management podcast, my guest is a 2005 WSU Sport Management alumnus who has worked in multiple sport franchises, ranging from the Phoenix Coyotes, the Dallas Cowboys, the San Francisco 49ers, and currently the San Francisco Giants. Please welcome Ryan Bates. Thanks for taking the time today, Ryan.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
So although it was 4 months ago, congratulations on your new role with the Giants. I saw on your LinkedIn that you've been there 7 years now.
Yep.
But congratulations on that. And what new roles come along with your promotion from being a manager to director of partnerships?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird time to be promoted because we're also in the middle of obviously a pandemic and we're cutting staff and things like that. So, essentially what happened was our SVP or our VP of partnerships had moved on to a new opportunity in Detroit with the Pistons. And the age of backfilling right now is a challenge. So trying to just kind of pull the pieces together internally was frankly a cost-effective option for the Giants, I think. And, it allowed me career growth. So I'm, obviously on the overseeing the sales team now. There's a small but nimble partnership sales team that is out there selling, new business, but also trying to realize revenue in the age of COVID when we don't have fans or won't have as many fans in the stands. Like, how do we do that? So the partnership sales team, there's a total of 4 of us that are out there kind of hitting the streets, if you will.
And then, so for spring training, are anyone traveling at all, or is everyone still working remotely?
Yeah. So everyone's still remote, on the business side. So actually randomly, one of the guys on my team is living with his dad and their family down in Arizona. He left to, let his lease go in San Francisco and was just going to, hey, I'll figure out a new lease when we are back in the office. So he's actually in Scottsdale, which works out nicely that we actually do have somebody on the ground. We don't necessarily have to have that. It's a nice to have, not a have to have for us this year with such small attendance. We're only at 5% capacity for spring training, which is about 500 people. There at Scottsdale Stadium. And then, so not a lot of concessions. It's a lot of, managing, making sure that the few partners that we do have that are going to, be at games are well taken care of, they're in their seats, obviously socially distanced from everybody, which is pretty easy to do with 500 people. It's pretty manageable. So
I noticed that when you're at WSU, you worked in athletics marketing. And then after that, pretty much everything has been primarily sales oriented. What made this, how'd you make the switch and why did you make the switch to sales?
Yeah. So I've always kind of been in either the sponsorship or ticket sales world. Frankly, on the marketing side, when I worked in athletic marketing, a lot of what we were doing was kind of sponsorship fulfillment. It was who was giving away the promo item of the game, or, if it was the Cougs that was sponsoring Zoo Crew or things like that. I was one of the initial folks of Zoo Crew, so I take full credit for that. Not really, but I think like that. So there was a lot of that I understood the world of like, hey, to get things done in marketing, to get a marketing budget, you had to have partners be part of it. And so I really, again, I'm a baseball guy at my core, and so I'm just kind of how it ended up working out, where I got my internship in Tampa with the Rays, Devil Rays at the time, and then in the sponsorship department. So that's just kind of how it happened to be. And it really was marketing and sponsorship are really attached at the hip. And I think they still are to this day at the Giants where I'm at now. But, certainly it was in Tampa. And, I think realizing that, the money also is in sales. I was in the sponsorship activation world for my first 6-7 years in the industry, and then moved over onto the premium seating sales side with the Niners, and now on the sponsorship sales side, going into my eighth opening day with the Giants. So sales it's certainly more of a grind, but it is also where the dollars are, to be frank. So
yeah. Sure. And then, as you mentioned, baseball guy to your core. So in college, did you know that that's where I want to be? I'm going to be working in baseball.
That was the hope. I mean, I think I was job shadowing up at Western Washington University my sophomore year of high school. And I was like, yep, I want to be in sports marketing. I'd like to do this for the Mariners or be in baseball at some level. And Washington State was really the in-state sport management program. And I was, a fan of the Cougs anyway. So I was like, yeah, let's go to WSU. And, getting into athletics and being part of, the marketing department, I was like, yeah, baseball is definitely where I'd like to be. That's my number one sport. I think working in the NFL was a ton of fun, just different. Baseball is 162 games and 81 home games. It's nights and weekends and all those things. Like a lot of people, my friends think I'm crazy because it's just like I'm at the ballpark all the time. But at the end of the day, I'm at the ballpark all the time. Like that's not a bad gig in my world, especially in San Francisco. Like the Giants are such an iconic team that my wife calls it a high school football game because there's always somebody there. Whether it's someone I went to college with, someone that I used to work with, just friends from the city, whatever it might be, there's always someone in the ballpark. And with 81 games, like there's a good chance I'll know people most of those games somewhere in the ballpark. So I try to get out of there as quickly as I can if I can avoid it, knowing I can get stuck there pretty easily. So
yeah. Well, then as you were kind of saying, just day at the ballpark, which teams do you root for then? I mean, you've worked for so many different ones. You are from Washington. Like, which teams do you now root for?
That is a good question. I am a mercenary, so I am a fan of whoever writes my paycheck, first and foremost. So all my buddies that were, that are all diehard Seahawks fans, when I went to work for the Cowboys, and then right immediately after that to the Niners, was my 10-year high school reunion was super awkward because I was working for the enemy, if you will. But honestly, I want my friends to be successful, so I root for any and all teams that I have buddies that are working there. I'm getting off the, when I'm done with you, I'm getting on a phone call with my buddy at the Red Sox. And so I want him to be successful. I won't, even watching playoff football, I literally have to go through and it's like, who do I know in which team? And I have some buddies at the Bucks that they've sucked and they all of a sudden they roll into getting, Tom Brady and everything else. And now, I'm excited for them to get rings because it is, when you're an employee of the team that wins a championship, A, it makes your job a lot easier. But B, it's just an exciting, fun time where, I have a World Series ring, just like the players do. And, I think things like that, those types of perks are why we work in the industry is, we want to be around a winning franchise, however that is. So it's not an easy answer, but I'm a fan of a lot of teams if I have friends that are working there. So, which makes it challenging because there are some times where I'm like, I had fans of I got one of my good buddies at the Packers, one of my good buddies at the Bucks, and when they're playing each other, I was like, well, who has a ring and who doesn't? So that's really, that was where my allegiance lied. So, yeah. But it is a challenge because, even from going from the Cowboys to the Niners, I was in one suite with clients working for the Cowboys, knowing my bosses that I was already talking to the Niners. My bosses were 2 suites down for me. So it was a challenge, just that game alone who to root for, because I'm in San Francisco. I'm going to work for the Niners in a few months, but I still work for the Cowboys now. And frankly, we got to fly back on the team charter, and it's a really long flight back to Dallas if you lose. So there's some of those that was probably the weirdest instance of who do I really root for? Because I knew I was also going to be on the sales side. So if the Niners were doing well, it was going to only help me down the road on the sales side, which luckily I got there at the right time and they were dominant for those few years there, 11 and 12, 13, et cetera. So
yeah, easy to market a team that's winning.
Exactly. That's seriously, everyone says it's the best marketing strategy out there is winning. So,
but yeah, you kind of mentioned it about your favorite part of working in sports is just, the winning, that kind of stuff. But what else? What is the true passion that comes from working in sports?
I mean, I think it is just the fact that sports are so communal. I mean, it sounds sappy to say at the Giants, but we're not we have an ownership group, but it really, they view the Giants as a part of the community. And so everything we do is based on sponsorship. Okay, what does this do to help the fan experience or help our junior Giants program? Or there's a bigger, it's more than just this business. We want this business to be successful. We are a part of the community and somewhat of a representation of the community. I mean, I think, the Giants certainly are that in the city of San Francisco. We were the only team in the city for, the Niners left and the Warriors weren't with us yet. So we were San Francisco. And I feel like, the Giants are somewhat quintessential San Francisco. So I love that kind of sense of community of the team, especially when you're winning. Obviously, the hot dogs are hotter, the beer's colder, everything's great and rosy. But I think at the end of the day, having a team with history and tradition is a lot of fun to work for. But as an industry, I think it is, you're able to reach out to people just based on their fandom. I mean, I've gotten deals done with CEOs that, their marketing people are like, why did you sign this deal? And, well, I'm a huge Giants fan. There's some of those things that you tug on the heartstrings, just like, frankly, you do with alumni at WSU or elsewhere, to say like, hey, who can we work with that's going to be an advocate for me, and finding those things on the sales side for me is really important. But having, it makes it a lot easier phone call on the sales side to say like, hey, I saw you're a Giants fan. I saw you were at a game or whatever it might be. It's a little bit more fun that way. And again, at the end of the day, like, I'm picking up the phone and talking baseball, or football or whatever it might be, or hockey. Hockey in the desert was a little tougher. Working for the Phoenix Coyotes, I have some friends that are still there, but that was an uphill battle, working for a hockey team in the middle of the desert. So
yeah, just tell them that it's the only place to go cool off.
Exactly.
Like I mentioned, from your LinkedIn, you've been with the Giants about 7 years. Do you still kind of, shop around, like not even shop, but just look around at other positions? I mean, for myself and others, that's all we're doing is looking for jobs right now. Is that something you still do?
Yeah. I mean, I think, if you're not moving forward, you're not moving. I just feel like you have to continue to look for that, wherever that next opportunity is. It could be at the Giants. And I just got promoted to director, so I'm not actively looking, but I think you always listen. I don't think it hurts to listen at all times in your career, because you don't know what other opportunities are out there. What I've found is obviously there's some resources, Teamwork Online and those types of websites. A lot of teams, the Giants being one of them, use that site, but also getting in with recruiters and having like some advocates that are going to bring you opportunities is not a bad place to be too. And that's really, so I wouldn't say I'm actively on Teamwork or anything like that at this point, but I certainly, if a recruiter calls and has an opportunity, I'll listen. It's hard now with a wife and 2 young kids to figure out what that next move is. It was easy for me to be like, okay, cool. I'll go to the Cowboys for a couple of years. I'll go to the Niners for a few. Like, now that move needs to be a bigger move. I mean, one of my good buddies is at SAC FC, and they were supposed to be in MLS, and he got the job. He moved there to be their CRO. And then Friday it just came out that they're not going to be an MLS team anymore. So he's kind of left like, I just moved my whole family. He's got 3 young kids, and so there's some of those things that it's a risk. But I think sports is a small industry that once you kind of know people, you also your phone will ring. If you're good in the industry and you have a good name and a good reputation, your phone will ring. So.
Okay. And then what is something that you wish you knew entering the sports industry that wasn't taught in your sport management classes?
That's a good question. I mean, I really enjoyed, I always say like the best classes I took at school were doing the practicum work that I needed to do and the internship after, I did my internship a little funky where it wasn't the last thing I did. I petitioned to do it early because I wanted to do a baseball season. I had the internship in Tampa, but I think those jobs were so like, just even working, like I was in like operations for like the soccer during the women's soccer season or whatever. And it was like, okay, this is interesting. Not something I want to do long-term, but at least I know that like you kind of like were able to try different things. I think, I always go back to, I had a sport econ class. And so it wasn't even necessarily sport management mandated, but it was part of my business minor. And the professor, I liked him, but you get into the real world of what things are actually like. And it's just so different than like what a book is telling you it should do, or what the business of sports is really like until you're in it. It's hard to teach that stuff. So I think having the wherewithal to have force everybody to do an internship and get outside your bubble, outside the bubble of Pullman, I think was super helpful for me and really led to where I'm at career-wise today, because I was able to get so much work done on campus that led to an internship off campus, and we progressed from there. So
does someone have to choose a route right when they enter the sports industry, or do you think it's reasonable to go try out something at entry level and then kind of keep jumping from marketing to sales or sales to marketing?
It can be. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of times you're going to open you open your doors probably the easiest in the ticket sales world, not today, but soon when things are opening back up. I think ticket sales is typically kind of the entry level. There's not a ton of there's some entry level marketing jobs, but that's a little bit, it's a lot easier to get in with an organization. And as opportunities come up, you're able to move, internally. I mean, we have randomly one of the guys that started in ticket sales for us is now like our, senior director of IT. So like it is kind of getting that foot in the door. If there's an organization you want to be with, I think, you don't have to be, you're not pigeonholing yourself by taking one job or another. So especially if you're in minor league sports, like you're doing it all. Like, I mean, it's minor league sports are, I think really interesting because you might be tarping the field and selling tickets and, working on a backup popcorn machine and selling sponsorships to the local barbecue restaurant. Like there's something to be said for that too, which is like kind of quintessential Americana, like minor league baseball is. I love minor league baseball. I hold, my time, like when we had a minor league team in Bellingham, it was amazing. Like I loved that stuff. So, so it just depends on the opportunity, but I think a lot of times you're not really pigeonholing yourself. I think getting your foot in the door is the best thing you can do. And then taking it where kind of leading, to take that opening and make what you will. You can realize, like, God, I don't want to be in ticket sales anymore. Get me the hell out of here. That happens. Or like, I'm really good at sales. If I string this together, I can make some good money doing it too. So there's opportunity. Like I said, as long as you get your foot in the door, that's the biggest piece, and get your name out there and start integrating in with other departments is really the easiest way to do that. So not just sitting at your desk and making phone calls, but it's getting up and working with other departments and seeing what is this, what does marketing look like at the Giants? What does social media look like at the Giants? Like they're, and understanding like, God, I want to be part of that, or man, I really don't want to be part of that world at all. So the more you can get to know other people within the organization, the more advocates you're going to you'll have down the line, whether it be there or as you're looking elsewhere.
How should people start at this time getting in, like, to those entry level foot in the door positions to work in sports? Where should they be looking?
Well, I think right now, I mean, it is teamwork online because there's just not a ton. I mean, normally you'd have kind of an inside sales season where you're going to bring guys and gals in, in January, potentially to start selling tickets, like for the Giants. We kind of have like what we call like an inside sales class. So you'd have, and most teams do that. Most teams will have, not as much in the NFL because tickets are a different commodity in the NFL, but a lot of, NHL, NBA, MLB certainly will have ticket sales, like inside sales classes. And then you're there for a year, maybe 2 years in inside sales. And then you figure out, okay, great, I'm going to move into season ticket sales, or I'm going to move into premium and I'm sell luxury suites or whatever it might be. And then you kind of find your path that way. So I think teamwork is probably the best right now because there's just not a lot out there, unfortunately. I feel bad for you guys that are going through this right now because it's not the easiest time to find a job in sports or in a lot of industries. And sports certainly being one of them. We cut 11% of our staff mid-pandemic, and some of it was just we had a lot of people there that were there for a long time, and it was their time to move on. But I think a lot of it is just like, hey, we need, people are looking for ways to cut right now. But when we get back up and running, I feel like teams are going to need to ramp up really quickly. And when they do, they're going to need to hire really quickly. So I think being, if there's a job opportunity, then reach out, certainly on whether it be LinkedIn or Teamwork, and then find an HR person, find an email to an HR person and follow up and say like, hey, saw this opportunity, applied online, just want to make sure you got my resume. It doesn't hurt to do those things. And then certainly, there's a way to use the network of Coug alum. I mean, there's a bunch of us out there, as I'm sure going through this, and we want to be help in any way we can as well. So whether that's, we're hearing about other opportunities, or we know, we're going to be hiring down the, in the next couple months or whatever it might be. So those would be kind of some of the keys for me.
What would you say is one of your favorite memories from working in sports at WSU?
Working on campus at WSU? Yeah. Well, I loved football season at WSU. Like it was, I joked that I never really went to a game because I worked. I mean, I started my internship, in athletic marketing my sophomore year. And that's, so every football game outside of my freshman year, which I kind of remember going to some of those games. But it's, sophomore, junior, senior year, working in those games, sitting next to Professor Johnson he's on the PA and there's something about Cougar Football Saturday that you can't put your finger on. And I did my claim to fame in what would have been 04. Apple Cup 04. I ran the game day flag out of the tunnel because it was a long story, but it is, I did run, I led the team out with a game day flag, I think it was 04. God, that makes me feel really old to say that number. But anyway, so that was also, but again, I think Cougar Football Saturday, being part of athletic marketing, being like either at the press box or down on the field, and just kind of feeling the energy in Martin Stadium you can never replicate that. I mean, I've worked games at Cowboys Stadium, been on the field for national championships and other things. Like it's something different at WSU. Like I try to explain it to people unless you're there and you feel it for yourself. It's just so different. So.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yep. It's just the energy and the passion that people have the fans have for Cougar football. It's just a different feeling when you're in the stadium, and when you're watching the game as a fan, it's that you get that, but working it too, you still feel that.
Exactly.
All right. Well, that looks to be all the time we have today, but thank you, Ryan, for coming on the podcast. I hopefully that those listening have been able to learn something and, would be able to entertain by some of the, your stories and stuff, but I appreciate you taking the time out of your day.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.